Okay, hello. Ignore the partially assembled giant Gundam behind me. That is next week's video. But welcome to the in-progress renovation, remodel, basement studio. And right now, things are kind of a mess and that wall is very boring. I gotta put something up on there. But anyways, long story short, while moving everything around, I've kind of realized I have a lot of Prusa printers and it kind of snuck up on me. Now, to be fair and full disclosure, while I have purchased some Prusa printers myself, the majority of the ones I do own were given to me by Prusa for testing, evaluation, content creation, etc., etc. YouTube disclosure, there you go. So short story long, I've kind of realized I don't think I've done a proper review on any of them so far. So since things are kind of a mess right now and everything's everywhere and nothing's plugged in, let's get them up on the bench and let's see if we can speed run a review of all the current Prusa printers on the market. Yeah, so this is gonna be like the pros, the cons, things I like, things I don't like, and based on my experience, what I think you should do and what I recommend. So let's get started. So I think we'll start with this one right here first because it's already on the desk. This is the Prusa Mk4 and I think this is the Prusa you probably think of when you think of a Prusa printer. It is a bed flinger. It's an i3 style bed flinger, although it's not really an i3 because it's just called the Mk4. And I've had this one for a couple of years here. I've started with the original Mk4 that I did purchase one for myself, and then Prusa did send over a kit that I built, and then they have sent over this Mk4 here. So I have three Mk4 printers. This one is pretty much bone stock. The only thing I've done on it is change the nozzle to a Obsidian E3D nozzle so I can print abrasive materials, and I have kept it pretty much stock, unenclosed, out here in the open, and it's been working great. So for reference, over the past 3 months, I've been printing parts for this giant Gundam build here. 4 of my printers have seen over 2,000 hours of printing total and around 50 kilograms of printing on the Prusa printers for this giant project. So I've been putting hours on these machines here, and I've come to the conclusion that, yeah, they just kind of work. There really isn't much more to say about them, but we'll dive into it. So with the Mk4, what do I like about it the most? Well, it's kind of nice that it's simple and open. So what do I mean by that? Well, yes, it is a bed flinger, but you can get at everything here. So if you need to do any maintenance on this printer, you need to replace anything, you feel like modding it, changing something out, it's all just right there. Now, there's a downside to everything just being right there. It's open frame. You're probably not going to be printing ABS, ASA, or any high temperature material on here without putting it in an enclosure. And putting a Mk4 in an enclosure right now is not really a great idea in my opinion because of other printers in the Prusa lineup, but we'll get to those later. If you are looking for a very reliable printer that you have the ability to mod, to tweak, and to do easy maintenance on, and you know for sure you don't need to print anything enclosed, so you know you're printing like TPUs, PLAs, PETGs, etc. I think this is not a bad option, especially if you go the kit route. Now, buying the pre-assembled version, you do save, you know, about 12 hours of time building the printer for the average person, I believe. I do have the whole live stream build of this printer on this channel if you are interested in watching me build one. So you do save quite a bit if you buy the kit version, and personally, I find building kits fun. That is my background when it comes to the additive manufacturing. I love my open source machines and I love building kits. So going this route, getting a kit Mk4, building it yourself, you save a bit of money, you learn about the printer itself, how to maintain it, if you need to replace anything down the line. And that is one of the good things about Prusa printers, is they like to support and maintain their printers in the long run. And they also offer a lot of options when it comes to upgrading your printers. I have a 3.5 we'll get to in a minute after I finish about the Mk4s, but you can take one of these printers and when they come out with a new version of the printer, they usually offer upgrade kits to either fully upgrade to the new one or partially upgrade to the new one. So this is the Mk4. I really like it. It prints really good, but it only does one color. What if we want to do multicolor? Well, if you're going to want to do multicolor printing on your Prusa, you're going to need a multi-material unit. and they have the MMU3. Now, while they do call it a multi-material unit, I'm a fervent believer that if your printer only has one nozzle, it's really a multi-color system. While you can do multi-material with a setup like this, the issues of cross-contamination between different filaments, different nozzle temperatures, and the purge requirements, it makes it very annoying and unreliable, and while it can work, it's just asking for trouble. So it's a multicolor system in my opinion. But anyways, long story short, this is a Prusa Mark IV. It's not the Mark 4S. This one is pretty much stock, other than the fact that I do have a aftermarket printed fan shroud here just to give me some more enveloped cooling of the part. The stock one just blows in from the side. So we have that there. It is running the stock nozzle. Prusa does recommend that the stock nozzle is a little bit more reliable than the high flow nozzle when it comes to multi-material with their MMU system here. So I have left it with the stock nozzle. And the reason for that is they do not cut the filament. So that means they have to do tip forming, which has the downside of being a little bit less reliable. Now, to be fair, I've only had, I think, 1 or 2 issues of feeding filament back in from the MMU unit where it just kind of missed the feed ramp and it did error out, it come down, you manually fix it, and then it works. But there are some advantages of not cutting the filament. Now, you do take, again, a minor hit to reliability, which in my experience isn't really that big of a deal. But what you do gain is the fact that compared to when I was running a Bamboo X1 with the AMS unit, I think this is a little bit faster and it uses less material because it doesn't have to push out and purge out that slug of filament that's cut off in the hot end every time you do a filament swap. And another reason that I kind of like the MMU over like an AMS type system, this does 5 colors. You would be surprised at how often 5 colors is more handy when it comes to a multicolor print than 4 colors, because pretty much every other option on the market right now for most other companies are 4 colors. Now, to be fair, you can also daisy chain AMS units or CFS units and get more than 4 colors, but that gets bulky and expensive fast. And as a standalone unit, 5 is more than 4, and bigger number, better printer. It also comes in really handy when doing hue forges, because most of the time with a hue forge, you're gonna probably want a black and a white, and then other colors to blend. So I like the 5 colors. I found it much more useful in multicolor printing. Now, above the MMU3 here, we do have this. This is, in my opinion, the downside of the Prusa MMU system, and that is something I affectionately refer to as the rat's nest. In fact, I have a little 3D printed rat living in there right now. And that is because this system is just a multi-material unit for swapping over filament. Essentially, this just automates the process, pausing print, retract filament, feed in new filament, resume print. That's what this does, it's automating it. But it doesn't have the built-in buffer system that a system like the AMS has. So what that means is you need an analog buffer, which we have right here. This is the stock one that Prusa ships with the kit. If you want, there are community design ones, aftermarket buffers. There's a whole selection of buffers, filament rewinders you can hook up to this, but I'm running it pretty stock. I just have the stock buffer. I do have it mounted to the wall there, and in fact, I'm gonna have to move this whole setup during this remodel. And then feeding the filament, I actually have a Repcord rep box. So filament's loaded in the rep box, it keeps the dust off of it. I don't have this one sealed up, so humidity could be an issue depending on where you live. In my basement, it's not too bad. And filament feeds through the buffer to the MMU, and it prints. And it works pretty good. It is more annoying in the initial loading and unloading of the filament because you have to manually feed it through everything. But in actual operation, I found the system extremely reliable, robust, and it works quite well. And again, I do find it a little bit faster than an AMS or other style systems such as that, like the Box Turtle. And that is my thoughts and opinions on the MMU system. Now, question, what if you want to print ABS though on your Mark IV? Well, you're gonna have to put it in a box, and I have a Prusa in the garage that is a Mark IV in a box, but it's been through some stuff. So let's go take a look at that now. So say hello to my Mark IV that lives in a box in my garage. And as you can notice, compared to the other Mark IVs you saw, this one is gold. And there's a reason for that. This is the original Prusa Mark IV that I got, and I bought this one myself. I bought it from Prusa on release, and it shipped with the original PETG parts. Now, Prusa has changed a lot of their print farm over to CF nylon, I believe, or CFPC parts, I believe. This one shipped with original PETG parts, and taking PETG parts enclosing them in a Prusa enclosure, which Prusa did send me, and putting them in a garage where the ambient temperature of my garage got into the mid 30s Celsius in an enclosed printer while printing ABS and ASA. Let's just say things got a little melty, and belt tension kind of went on an adventure and stuff was slipping and sliding everywhere. Now, nothing really failed per se, but a lot of the screws got loose, my belts got loose, and stuff just started shimming around. So this machine has gone through a full essential part rebuild with gold ASA parts now. And since I've done that rebuild, it's been working great. I haven't had any issues. Again, this is a Mark IV, not a Mark IV-S, so I do have the replacement fan shroud printed on it, and I am running a hardened nozzle on it as well for abrasive material. So the thing is though, there's a much better way to do this. If you want to print ABS and ASA on your Prusa, there are better options out there. It's called the Core 1. But we'll get to that after we talk about the other Core XY Prusa has. So let's head back downstairs. Actually, before we head back downstairs, I forgot about this guy. This is my Prusa Mark 3.5. This was originally a Prusa Mark III that's been upgraded to have the electronics of the Mark IV. So we still have the original Mark III extruder, the original Mark III frame, motors, everything, but it has the Mark IV screen and electronics box. So that means while you're still got original hardware, you have web connection, online connection, you're able to transfer files to it remotely. It prints a bit faster, it prints a bit quieter. It's got modern features like input shaping, and it is a really solid option for those that have Prusa Mark IIIs right now, because Prusa does offer upgrade options for their printers when they come out for new stuff. Now, there are different tiers to the upgrade, and I think honestly, in my opinion, the Mark III is probably your best option. It's $250 more last I checked to upgrade from a 3 to a 3.5. And I think that's the best bang for your buck option, because you can go and upgrade all the way to a Mark IV from a Mark III, but the price delta between the Mark III to Mark IV upgrade kit to just buying a standalone Mark IV kit, it's like $90. So you spend $90 more and you have a Mark IV that you still had to build, which you'd have to build anyways, but then you also still have a perfectly functional Mark III that you could put clipper on if you want to be experimental, swap out the tool head to a mod or something. So I really think the 3.5 is kind of where it's at when it comes to bang for the buck upgrades for the Mark III. This printer, I don't really have a set home for it. Most of my other printers have like a spot where they live. This is my carry around and move around printer. When I need a generic printer to compare other printers to, this is usually what I go to. If it prints well on this machine, it'll print well on pretty much any other machine that I have in current operation in my house. Okay, so moving on from the Mark IVs though, we have this. This is the XL, and it is probably the most divisive Prusa out there right now. People seem to either love this machine or the opposite of love this machine. And I'll be honest, I originally pre-ordered a Prusa XL two-headed version. I figured get the two-headed version. I wanted to use it specifically for multi-material printing. And eventually when release came out, I sat on it and then eventually canceled my pre-order. There was a lot of murmurs going around in the community about reliability in it. Unfortunately, it was also a bit out of my budget at the time. I just couldn't justify purchasing it. So when Prusa did reach out a couple months after release, I believe it was between 6 months and a year after release of the XL, they reached out and they asked if I wanted one to build on the channel for content and create content with it. I said, sure. And they sent me this. This is a 5-tool Prusa XL. And again, I have seen what the community has said about this printer in regards to reliability. Some people really love it. Some have had a lot of issues with it, and I really haven't had any issues with this printer. I have done multicolor printing on it, as you can see from this Deadpool that I've dropped on the ground by accident and broken a bunch of stuff off of it. But it does print pretty dang good. I do have some minor issues with the Core XY. I have one bearing that is making a noise. It's not really affecting functionality. It's more annoying than anything. I just haven't got around to replacing it. And also, one of the tools did have a bum thermistor that showed up a couple weeks after I started running it. I contacted Prusa. They sent a replacement hot end assembly, and it's been fine since then. Also, another issue I had with the XL when I first originally got it, this was in my garage and it was up against a wall that was an exterior wall. At the time, my garage didn't have air conditioning. It was in the mid-30s in the summer and the wall baked in the sun all day. So what ended up happening, this kept overheating. The electronics box is in the back. There is no active fan cooling for the main processor. It is heat sunk to the enclosure, but there's no fan and no venting. So it was overheating. Now, I fixed that quite easily by just 3D printing a cover with a fan. But if you are looking to run this in an area that is warmer, you're probably gonna wanna do a fan mod to it just to fix that. Otherwise, if you are running this inside, I haven't run into any issues with temperature now that it's inside the house. So I was running it in a above average temperature environment and it was suffering a little bit, but now that it's back inside, it's not an issue at all. So it hasn't been without its flaws, but those flaws were kind of minor, and the pros I've gotten out of this machine have been numerous. This printer has over 26,000 tool changes on it and over 54 days of print time. It has been an absolute workhorse when it comes to printing parts for my Giant Gundam, because while I have used it for multicolor prints, it's really good at hue forges, by the way. It has been an absolute workhorse for multi-material, which is how I currently have it set up. So with the 5 tool heads, they're basically each assigned and customized for a specific role. Tool head 1, I have loaded with I believe it's a Phaetus silicon carbide nozzle for printing abrasive filaments. Tools 2 and 3 are pretty much stock. Tool 4, I have loaded with a oversized Bowden tube with a larger internal diameter, so that way there's less friction on the sticky TPU while it's feeding in. So tool 4 is my flexible tool head, and then tool 5, I pretty much have set aside for my dissimilar material support. So if I'm printing with a dissolvable support, or in the case where I've, again, been printing a ton of parts for the Gundam, I've been printing with PETG on the main tool heads and then PLA on the support tool head, because that saves so much time. Until you actually use a tool head for a multicolor or multi-material print, you don't realize how much time you've been wasting on purge, and not just purge, waiting for the filament to retract out of the tool head and then feed back to the tool head. When you're doing a tool change, a layer for hundreds or thousands of layers, it adds up super quick. Also, with this being a tool changer, depending on your slicer settings and your tuning and what you're looking to get out of the part you're printing, sometimes you can even avoid the prime tower. So you don't need purge, because each tool is loaded with its own filament. But when you're printing a print that has a lot of details on it, you're probably gonna wanna do a prime before going into actually printing your part. That way, sure, the filament's flowing out of the hot end, you haven't dribbled out too much and you under extrude for the first little bit. But if you have your settings set to do inner walls before outer walls, and you're doing a bunch of walls, or infill before outer walls, for example, or support with 2 walls or 1 wall, there are a lot of settings you can tune to essentially avoid the need of even the prime tower. So you're looking at like 5 seconds between filament changes, because these are independent tool heads, they can preheat. So it can really go through multicolor prints fast, or in the case that I've mostly been using for printing with dissimilar material supports. Because when I print with dissimilar material supports, yes, you can save a lot of time by printing with just the interface layer being the dissimilar material. But say you're printing with an expensive material, or one that you don't have a lot of, you really don't want to be wasting that material, throwing it in the garbage because it was all support. So you have your part being printed at a CF PETG, it's all nice and good. And then the support is just that spool of PLA that's been collecting dust for a couple years, because that's what I've been doing. I've managed to clear out a lot of my old PLA inventory by just using it as strictly support material. Or are you hanging on to a couple spools of polyalchemy elixir, and you really don't want to waste this on something nobody's gonna see, like infill? Well, why not print the outer walls in this rare filament that you can't buy anymore, and print the infill with like just generic yellow, right? Tool changers are so much fun, and the downside is tool changers are complicated and tool changers are expensive. In fact, there's a reason there's really not a lot of other options on the market when it comes to tool changers. And again, they're complicated and they are expensive. They're hard to do right. I really hope Snapmaker nails it with the U1 that's coming out soon, because I do want to see more lower cost options for tool makers on the market. Because again, once you get your hands on one of these and you use them regularly, you're not gonna wanna go back. Now, you may notice my XL is fully open here. I don't have the enclosure on it. And while I could get the enclosure, I'm honestly not in a rush to get it. This machine, I've mostly been printing PLA and PETG on. I have plenty of enclosed machines out of my garage that I can print ABS and ASA on. So I'm not in a super high rush, because the only reason I would want to print dissimilar materials with ABS is to use HIPS as a dissolvable support material. Unfortunately, the chemical you need to dissolve HIPS, which I'm not gonna try and pronounce because I butcher it every time, it's here on screen. It's not exactly the cheapest material, and honestly, it hasn't been something I've run into. I have a ton of generic ABS, and when I print stuff in ABS, it's usually gonna be post-processed or it's just gonna be left alone. And ABS isn't that expensive, so the wastage in support isn't really a deal breaker for me. And another thing you might notice with the XL is it is big. When you put this on a desk, you better hope you have a large size desk to put this on. The umbilicals, they stick up quite a bit above the printer. I'm gonna have to move some stuff around here during the reorganization so those don't clash with anything. And the desk I originally had this on, this actually overhung it by a couple inches, so I had to move the feet in. It wasn't optimal. This is a big printer, and that's before, you know, you load it up with 2 kilogram spools. It is big. It is not as heavy as you think it is, but it is still pretty heavy. And that is with it just being open frame. With it enclosed, it's even bigger and it's even heavier. So the biggest downside with the XL, in my opinion, it's big, it's heavy, it is what it is, but also the price is what it is. It is an expensive tool. If you are just looking for something to print multicolored trinkets and Q forges and whatnot, there are much cheaper options on the market. They're probably not gonna be as fast as a tool changer, but for the price difference, you can buy a lot of filament for that price difference. So if you are looking at a tool changer and this does meet the requirements that you need, this is an option. But if you're just looking for a normal printer to print the odd multicolor thing, there are probably more suitable options out there for you. This is like all 3D printers. For some, this is exactly the tool they need. For others, this is not needed. So you have to make the decision for yourself. So that is Prusa's big Core XY 3D printer. So let's go take a look at their other Core XY printer, the Core 1. Let's go. So these are my Prusa Core 1s. This is Core 1, and this one is Core 1 2. This one was a pre-built machine sent to me by Prusa, along with when all the other review units shipped out just before release. This one was a kit that we did build on this channel on live streams. If you want to check it out, it's linked below. And yeah, they're both pretty much stock. This one does have a Diamondback hardened nozzle on it, along with a BQ cryo grip bed. But they are both essentially the same printer. I haven't really done any modifications to it besides that. This one does have the camera, which this is honestly one of the biggest pain points with Prusas. They don't have cameras. And that is because, unlike a lot of the other printers on the market, these aren't running Clipper. They're running Prusa's firmware, which is forked from Marlin so long ago, it's pretty much its own thing, but that means it's not running a Linux SoC, which means you can't just, you know, it's not running Linux. You can't just plug a camera in like you can with a Clipper machine. There's just not enough power in the processor on these to essentially render a video and all that and transmit it. So if you want a camera with a Prusa printer, you essentially have to get an IP camera. Now, Prusa does offer an IP camera you can buy, the Buddy cameras. This one, I don't have it in the machine right now because I have to do a software update on it, because when they originally sent out, it was black and white only, and it was measured in seconds per frame. I think it's a bit better now, so I just pulled it out of the machine so I can do a software update on it. But they are just essentially IP cameras, and how that works, Prusa machines, all the modern ones, they can communicate over the internet using Wi-Fi, and you can use Prusa Connect, which is a cloud-based solution, or you can use Prusa Link. Now, downside is I really wish Prusa Link was as fully featured as Prusa Connect for those that are trying to avoid the cloud and want to keep everything on their own internal network. You can still transfer files and do basic monitoring of the printer with Prusa Link, but you're missing out on some of the more advanced features along with camera support with Prusa Link. You have to use Prusa Connect, which is the cloud-based option. But Prusa Connect allows you to basically take an IP cam, pair it with a printer, and you can monitor them both at the same time. So that is really nice. And it works pretty good with all the printers that I have that are capable of connecting to the Wi-Fi in my house. So the Prusa printers, the Core 1s, the easiest way to describe these machines is basically everything the Mark IV is, but better. It prints a bit better, it's a bit faster, it's a bit larger. It is a little bit quieter in some regards, but it does have some harmonic noises because it's an enclosed printer, so you have the frame vibrating or the panels sometimes vibrate, but it's not that bad. These machines are still much quieter than most other commercial printers I've used recently. You can open up little vents at the top if you're printing PLA or PETG to let the hot air out so you don't cook your print, and you can close them when printing ABS and ASA. There are exhaust fans in the back. You can put filters on the back of it. It's, you know, the whole frame's magnetic, so you can, you know, use magnets to attach like exhaust ducts and whatnot to it. Even the camera. The camera is just held in there with magnets in a corner. On the side, this is where you put your spools. They sit in the side in these nice little cutouts. You can't print in this area of the chamber, so Prusa went and bumped the frame in so there's less volume to heat, so heating up the chamber is more efficient. There's only the bed heater. It still gets plenty hot to print ABS. It sits in the mid 50s Celsius quite easily when printing ABS and ASA. One thing that is a small annoying irk, I really wish they shipped these with the spool holders that the XL has that slide out nice and easily. These are 3D printed spool holders, and they only hold 1 kilogram spools or smaller. So if you want to use a 2 kilogram spool, you have to either use a standalone spool holder or you have to 3D print a community mod. I don't know why they just didn't use the same type of spool holder the XL uses, but I don't know. But these I have, I guess the best way you can say, I have the least to say about these printers. They just work. I've had barely any issues on them. The only issues I've had on them is stuff that's kind of printer agnostic, like, oh, I didn't clean the bed and the part kind of warped a little bit or something. Stuff like that. They've been pretty reliable. This one was a little annoying at first with belt harmonics, but I tuned the belts and I updated the firmware, and it's much better now, especially on the new profiles. This one is the one I built. I think it prints a hair better and a little bit quieter than the original one I have, but we're talking like margin of error difference, and honestly, I couldn't tell which print came off which printer. It's just kind of like when you do a one-to-one comparison or you're standing directly in front of them. Some things I would just like to see. I wish they shipped with a camera default. I believe they have a sale going on right now where if you buy a Core 1, it comes with a camera. I hope they make that a permanent thing, honestly, because that's honestly like the biggest critique of the Core 1. There's just not as many of those small little niche quality of life features that some other printers offer. But in return, you're getting something that is, it just works. I haven't had the issues on this machine that I had on when I was testing like a Creality K1, for example, and some of the little nitpicky workflow issues that stop me from using my Bamboo machines. Like, for example, when you're monitoring a print with Prusa Connect, I can see all my Prusa printers at once in one window. Bamboo and Bamboo Studio, you can't do that. You have to have a separate farm software to monitor that, and it only works on Windows. I have Linux laptops and it uses the cloud. So it's kind of like you're not getting quite as much quality of life features, but what is here is very robust. And at the end of the day, if you're one of those people that just wants a printer that you know when you load filament in it, hit print, and it's gonna print, it's gonna print, because these have just been solid workhorses since the day I got them set up here on the bench. So yeah, if you're looking to get a Prusa, honestly, right now, the Core 1s are probably the best bang for your buck and probably the best option for the most people. The Mark IV is a great printer. This is everything the Mark IV is, but better. But there still is some other printers we gotta talk about. So let's head back downstairs. So we're back down here, and I think that's all the Prusa printer. Oh wait, of course, how can I forget the resin printer? I don't have the Prusa resin printer. I don't do a lot of resin printing, and yeah, I don't have one. So let's talk about the other Prusa printer, the Mini. Let's get the Mini out here. So this is not the Prusa Mini. This is my not a Prusa Mini. It's a Physec kit. Prusa Mini clone. It's got a 3D chameleon on it, or it had a 3D chameleon on it. I think I've scavenged this for some parts over the years. But this is kind of the Prusa that still exists, and I think it's about time it gets sunsetted. That's my opinion on the Mini. There are people who say there are no bad products out there, just products at price points that aren't the greatest. I think that describes the Prusa Mini quite well. It's not a bad printer, at least the real Prusa Minis that I've seen. It prints well, it's reliable, it's relatively compact, it's quiet. That's something all the Prusa printers are great at, by the way. They are relatively, especially compared to modern other 3D printers that have blow emitrons and CPAP and curtain air. Prusa printers are quiet. If you're looking for a printer to run in your college dorm or in your bedroom or computer room while you're actively in there, Prusa printers are great for that. But anyways, back to the Mini. The big problem is it's an old printer design. I think the Prusa Mini is like 5 years old now or older. And it's at a price point where there's just so many other options on the market that are more capable that it's kind of hard to justify purchasing one. So out of all the Prusa printers, this is like the one that is the hardest to recommend. I do believe there is a market for every one of these printers for somebody at some point, for some use case. But this one's got to have the narrowest margin. It's the Prusa Mini. So what would I like to see Prusa do? I would honestly love to see a simplified Mark IV. I would love to see if Prusa can go through the Mark IV. Now that the Mark IV is kind of in that weird spot where for a little bit more you can get a Core 1, which is a relatively more capable machine. It's enclosed, it's a little bit faster, it's a little bit quieter, it's got a little bit bigger print volume. The Core 1 is everything the Mark IV is, but better. So it makes the Mark IV harder to justify. What I would like to see, if possible, some sort of Mark IV E or some sort of costed down version of the Mark IV, if they could even cost it down more than it is, to kind of replace the Mini in the price line. Because right now that's something the Prusa line of printers is missing. They're missing that entry-level budget machine, and they might not be able to do that anymore. The way the market has changed over the years, especially with the competition from Asian-based companies, it's just very hard to compete on the entry level. It is what it is. That's honestly the biggest thing I hear about Prusa printers is the price. I'm sure if they could sell them for cheaper, they would, but it is what it is. For some people, the price makes it a no-no. For some, it's a non-issue. Again, you're the one buying. You have to make that decision. You have to look at your use case, your needs, your wants, and it might be a printer for you. It might not be a printer for you. Now, as somebody who has now spent a bit of time with Prusa printers, I didn't get my first Prusa until relatively recently, about 3 years ago when I got my first Mark 3S. And I've really liked what Prusa has done with their ecosystem, where there's continuous development. They're always working on stuff. I think today they just announced, while I was filming this, that with printables, you can now one-click print from within printables to printers that aren't even Prusa printers. So you can find something on printables, slice it in the web browser, and send it to your Voron. They're always working on stuff. They're always working on upgrades. It's continuous improvement. The Prusa you buy today will not be the Prusa you have in 5 years. Even if you don't change a thing on the machine hardware-wise, you'll get software updates. In fact, they were offering software updates for the Mark II last year. That machine is ancient by today's standards. Easy to work on, they're reliable, they do what I want them to do the way I want printers to work. I know there are cheaper printers out there. I know there are more capable printers out there. It's one of those things. It's a personal choice. Like a lot of things, you know, not everyone drives a Honda Civic. I'm pretty sure the vast majority of people would have no problem getting by as just having a Honda Civic as their car. But not everyone drives a Honda Civic. Some people want that Toyota Corolla or something else. So what would I like to see from Prusa in the future? The XL. It's not a bad printer as is, but again, back to there's no bad printers, just bad price points. What I would love to see is an XL2. If the Core 1 is designed based on everything you learned from the Mark IV with the neck extruder type tool head, and the XL where it's Core XY and you're starting to stamp sheet metal framing, I would love to see what you learned with the Core 1 taken back to the XL for an XL2. And especially now that Prusa has teased images of a Core 1 with an index type multi-tool head system, imagine how many tools you could fit on the back of an XL2 if it was the same size. Fully enclosed from the factory, just basically build it like a big core one, keep the bed, and just load a rack of index tool heads across the back. I would love for that to exist. So there's always cool stuff in the pipeline. I'm sure they're working on cool stuff. If you are looking for a printer, why not check out a Prusa? Because I'll be honest, I don't think I've been disappointed by any of the ones I've received so far. And for the thousands of hours I've put on them in the past 3 months printing this giant guy, they've worked reliably and they've printed great. So what are your opinions? What are your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comments below. While you're down there, don't forget to like the smash button, subscribe if you're not subscribed. If you want to help support the channel, the content I create, and the things I do, check out the links in the video description, and be sure to join us on the live streams. I'm Taylor, the Canuck creator. I hope you enjoyed this video. Enjoy the rest of your week. Cheers.